6 months since President Trump took office, his administration continues to be plagued by controversy and infighting. Early today, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, appeared before the Senate Intelligence Committee as part of their inquiry into Russian meddling and possible collusion in the 2016 election. Kushner addressed reporters at the White House after the closed-door meeting.
I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so. I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds for my businesses. And I have been fully transparent in providing all requested information.
Donald Trump Jr. and former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort will also appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week. Joining me now from Washington, Robert Costa, national political reporter for the Washington Post and moderator of Washington Week on PBS, Susan Page, Washington bureau chief of USA Today, and Hugh Hewitt. He's the host of the popular radio program, The Hugh Hewitt Show. Here in New York, Frank Bruni, columnist for the New York Times. I'm pleased to have all of them. Hugh Hewitt, let me begin with you. Tell me about the appearance today and what might happen this week with respect to this testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee.
I think Jared Kushner did about as well as anyone could in a difficult situation, Charlie. I read his entire 11-page letter over the air this morning so that commuters could. It was not a non-denial denial. It was specific and detailed. It was explanatory, and for those inclined to give Trump, the president, the benefit of the doubt, they will find it to be comforting. I found specifically interesting the fact that he said he had never met Sergei Gorkov before, nor has he had any contact with him after that sole meeting that was set up by Ambassador Kislyak in December. And I also found interesting that he specifically said no collusion. The two stories that have been aimed at him is he got Russian money, and he denied that specifically, and that he colluded on data. That was the McClatchy story, and he said he did not collude, and he acknowledged he ran the data operation. So I thought, for someone who's used to hearing evasive, non-denial denials, it was clear, it was specific, and it was complete for the day. It doesn't help anyone else out, but it helped him out.
But you're basing that on the statement that he released before he went into the to give the testimony.
I am. I read the whole thing, and I also listened to his 2.5 minutes afterwards, which are basically taken verbatim out of his statement. Who knows what he got asked in the congressional investigators hearing today, or what he'll say tomorrow. But thus far, what we've seen and read, you can't give that statement to a congressional committee under 18 U.S.C. 1001 and have anything false in it without violating the law. So I think it was a pretty specific denial.
Susan Page?
You know, this is not, however, the end of questions for Jared Kushner or anybody else. This is the beginning. Today was the beginning of a new phase of this investigation where we're hearing for the first time the central figures of people very close to President Trump being called to Congress and required to answer questions. And I do think that Jared Kushner deserves credit for not demanding a subpoena, for going up there voluntarily, for releasing the 11-page statement this morning. But there are many questions that remain to be asked. And I'll just point out one. In the statement, Jared Kushner said he did not rely on Russian money for his private business interests. It doesn't mean you have no Russian money. It doesn't mean Russian money wasn't offered. That's a question that, to me as a reporter, jumped out. It was a question that I think deserves some follow-up questions. And I'm sure there are many other examples where members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, are going to want to pursue questions with Jared Kushner and everybody else.
Robert Costa.
We're watching a president who ran a family enterprise for decades trying to take that same approach to the White House and encountering challenge after challenge. If you think beyond just the stalled Republican agenda on Capitol Hill, it's his family. Jared Kushner, the senior advisor, his son, Don Jr., all of their different meetings and entanglements, accusations about what they were up to during the campaign. This has been part of the Russia cloud that continues to sit over this White House. It's not going away today just because Mr. Kushner went to Capitol Hill. And I think it really encapsulates what President Trump is experiencing at this 6-month mark, a family enterprise still trying to protect his family, who he believes he's truly loyal to. They're the only people he truly trusts. But this is a presidency that is having problems because of that.
Frank, this is what you wrote over the weekend. On Monday, Jared Kushner is set to appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee, but not so that we can listen, not so that we can watch. It is a closed-door affair, meaning that unlike Jeff Sessions, Kushner gets to dance in the dark. How fitting. We always see his fingerprints but never hear his voice. He throws his weight around, then floats above it all. No wonder the president's lawyer and various White House aides and advisors are fed up with him. He's there but not there, a meddlesome ghost, a puff of smoke.
Well, I mean, when I heard his voice outside the White House today, I realized I'm not familiar with it. You know Trump's voice the minute you hear it. You could hear it, not see his image. Same thing with any number of other people in his administration. Not so with Jared Kushner, because he's occupied this very peculiar role where he lets it be known to the world, and in this it both ways. He lets it be known to the world that he's got great influence. In fact, he and Ivanka crow about their supposedly moderating influence on the president, even though it's not often visible. But then they kind of hold back and say, we're really not political types, etc. I want to say one thing about Jared Kushner's statement, which Hugh was referring to at the start. There was one thing about it that bothered me, which is he dwelled for a moment on, yes, I went into that Russian meeting, the famous one in June at Trump Tower, but it was a complete waste of time, so I left right away. That is so not the issue here. The issue here is that meeting was billed to Donald Trump Jr., and if Jared Kushner read the subject line of the emails that he was forwarded, it was billed to him, too, as Clinton, private, and Russia, Clinton, private and confidential. It doesn't matter if there was nothing useful in the meeting. What matters is what they believed going into the meeting, what their motives were. And his statement didn't satisfy me in that regard.
But are we looking now, and is this simply building up, as I think Susan said at the beginning, it's not the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end, it's something else. Are we looking at the beginning of what might very well be a kind of 6 months of hand-to-hand fighting between the Trump administration, investigative committees, and Bob Mueller?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the status quo right now, and I think it's going to continue. And I think what really scares people is the notion that if the president believes, as he says, that this is a complete witch hunt, if he's convinced he did nothing wrong, or if he's got something to hide, at what point does he ratchet it up by going beyond questioning the way Mueller's doing things, and does he at some point consider actually firing Mueller? And if he does that, then where are we? I mean, there are people who believe that scenario is absolutely plausible.
Hugh Hewitt, do you believe it's possible?
Possible, very ill-advised. Two observations. One, I never want Frank Bruni to be mad at me. I read his piece on Jared yesterday. I just don't ever want that to happen. But secondly,
yes.
Today it was announced that Donald Trump Jr. hired my old boss at the White House, Fred Fielding, widely regarded as among the wisest people in Washington. I am very certain that Fred's advice to Donald Trump Jr. is that he'd better hope Robert Mueller is not fired, because that is a firestorm. If you're innocent, if Jared is telling the truth, and everyone can make a declaration as specific and detailed as the ones he made about there not being collusion. I'm putting aside General Flynn and Paul Manafort into a different box. But the president, Donald Trump Jr., and everybody else inside the White House, then it will be over. Mueller is not going to indict someone for the benefit of indicting someone. He's got the reputation as a straight shooter. And I've said it 1,000 times. I don't know anyone who disagrees with me on the outside. You cannot fire Robert Mueller and expect your administration not to collapse, if only with momentum. The Republicans have enough problems without triggering sort of Saturday Night Massacre Light 2.0 with the firing of the special counsel.
Will it bring what some people call a constitutional crisis?
No, a constitutional crisis is when the Constitution isn't working. Right now I see the Constitution working with one exception. The Team Trump is so distracted they are not getting judicial nominations for Article III judges put forward. It's the bottom line for conservatives, and they have 20 different vacancies on the circuit court, more than 100 district court vacancies on the lower court for whom there has not been a nomination put forward yet. This is unacceptable. This is a failure of governance. So the constitutional structures are in place and they are working. I don't see a crisis. I do see a lot of controversy.